You feel it, don't you? The world is more connected than ever, yet so many of us are walking through life with a quiet, persistent ache of loneliness. It's not just a feeling, it's a reality we're all navigating. Men and women alike are finding themselves isolated, carrying habits and hurts that keep us drifting apart even when we're truly desperate to connect. Welcome to The Velvet Verdict. Before we go further, we want to be clear about how the show is made. We're a hybrid team of human writers and AI tools, working side by side to bring you this perspective. We believe that honesty about our process is the first step toward trust, just as honesty about our struggles is the first step toward healing. Here, we're not here to point fingers or score points. We don't believe the answer lies in blaming one side for the other's pain. When we look at the landscape of modern relationships, we see a shared, persistent wound. There's a part of men that's hurting, and there's a part of women that's hurting, and those hurts often talk past each other instead of to each other. Our mission is simple. We want to help you reconnect. We'll look at the social science to understand the shape of the isolation, and then we'll offer a gentle direction toward healing. This isn't therapy, and we're not prescribing a cure. We're just holding up a mirror with compassion, showing you that you're not alone in this, and that there is a path back to each other. We're here to listen, to learn from the data, and to walk this road together, one honest conversation at a time. Let's take a look at why we feel this way, and how we can rebuild the bridges we've lost, together. We stand at a crossroads where the noise is louder than ever, yet the silence between us feels deeper. Men and women are reaching out, often through screens, hoping to find a hand to hold, but too often we bump into walls of misunderstanding. The central question we must face isn't about who is right or who is wrong. It's about how we can bridge this growing distance when both of us feel unheard, exhausted, and trapped in scripts that no longer serve us. These old patterns were meant to protect us, but now they keep us apart. For too long, the conversation has been a tug of war, leaving everyone pulling harder and getting nowhere. We want to be careful here, because what comes next is our framing, and not a finding. It is the way this looks to us, not something the data measures. It seems to us that many men feel their contributions go unseen, and that many women feel they are holding things together and going unseen themselves. Neither side wants to be the villain. We're stuck in a loop where defensiveness replaces curiosity, and where the fear of being misunderstood keeps us isolated in our own corners. So, how do we step off this merry-go-round? How do we move past the fatigue of outdated roles and the sting of past hurts to find a new way forward? We have to ask ourselves if we can listen not to win, but to understand. Can we acknowledge the pain on both sides without assigning blame? The path back doesn't require one side to surrender. It requires both of us to lay down the armor. It asks us to recognize that our isolation hurts us all, and that healing begins when we stop keeping score and start looking for the shared humanity beneath the frustration. This is our invitation to rewrite the story, together with honesty and grace. What the data shows, the solo living surge. To understand where we're starting, we have to look at the landscape of our daily lives. The numbers tell a story of a quiet shift in how we live, one that affects everyone. The share of adults in their prime working and relationship years who are navigating life without a partner has climbed steadily. In 2019, 38% of adults ages 25 to 54 were unpartnered, neither married nor living with a partner, up from 29% in 1990. This isn't just a headline, it's a reflection of a changing rhythm in our communities. We see different currents within this trend. Among younger adults, the experience of being single varies by gender. Currently, 63% of men under 30 describe themselves as single, compared with 34% of women in the same age group. This gap invites us to look closer at the unique pressures and paths men and women are walking, reminding us that isolation can wear different faces even when the ache feels familiar. The structure of our homes mirrors this shift. Solo living has become the most common household arrangement in the United States, making up 28% of households in 2015, up from 13% in 1960. As this arrangement grows, the texture of our daily life changes. We encounter more people living independently, making community-based connection even more vital. The data shows the traditional family unit is no longer the sole anchor of our social world. This reshaping asks us to be more intentional about how we reach out, recognizing that many neighbors are navigating life on their own. It's not a retreat from each other, but a reconfiguration of how we gather. These figures don't point to failure, they map a new reality. Normal is expanding. When more of us are living alone, old scripts for connection don't always fit. This shift challenges us to build bridges beyond traditional partnerships. Recognizing the surge helps us stop judging ourselves or each other for missing an outdated mold. It opens space to ask how we can cultivate belonging in a world where solo living is the norm, turning our shared reality into a foundation for genuine reconnection. What the data shows: education, economics, and expectations. Today, 47% of U.S. women ages 25 to 34 hold a bachelor's degree, compared with 37% of men. Partnerships are adapting accordingly. In fact, 24% of marriages now feature a wife with more education than her husband, up from 19% in 1972. Financially, roles shift. 16% of marriages now have a breadwinner wife, up from 5%, while 29% operate as egalitarian partnerships, up from 11%. Yet expectations lag. A striking 71% of adults still believe a man must support a family financially to be a good partner, versus only 32% for women. This gap leaves many men facing steep headwinds. Among unpartnered men ages 25 to 54, only 26% have a bachelor's degree, compared with 37% of partnered men. Employment sits at 73% versus 91% for coupled men, with median earnings of $35,600 compared to $57,000. Education predicts stability. In 2015, 65% of degree holders married versus 50% of high school graduates, widening a gap absent 25 years ago when rates exceeded 60% everywhere. None of this signals failure. It simply shows the old provider playbook no longer fits modern economics. When expectations outpace reality, frustration follows for everyone. The way forward isn't retreating to rigid roles, but rewriting our shared story. We can honor the desire for stability while embracing flexible contributions and mutual support. We are all learning to navigate uncharted territory together. Instead of scoring points, we can focus on shared burdens. Real connection grows when we drop the blame and ask how we can support each other through this transition. Healing begins when we trade outdated scripts for honest conversations about what partnership truly requires today. What the data shows: the dating friction. When we look at the numbers, the picture isn't one of warring camps, but of two groups navigating the same uncertain terrain. Half of single men are looking for a committed relationship and/or casual dates, compared with 35% of single women. The exhaustion is widely shared. 75% of single and looking adults report it has been difficult in the last year to find people to date, and 67% say their dating life is going not too well or not at all well. And 55% of women say dating has gotten harder in the last 10 years, compared with 39% of men. The stumbling blocks differ. Men who struggle to date most often cite difficulty approaching people. 52% of men versus 35% of women. Women most often cite difficulty finding someone who meets their expectations. 56% versus 35% of men. Alongside this, 65% of Americans, 69% of men, and 61% of women say the increased focus on sexual harassment has made it harder for men to know how to interact with someone they're on a date with. What the data shows: a harm that stands on its own. One finding deserves to be held by itself, without being balanced against anything. 42% of women say someone they dated has pressured them for sex, compared with 19% of men. We're not going to file that under awkwardness or set it beside the difficulty of starting a conversation as though the two were the same kind of problem. Coercion is not a communication gap. It is a harm. It falls most heavily on women, and it is a real reason that caution exists. We say that plainly because the rest of this episode asks for patience between men and women, and that request is only honest if it is not asking anyone to be patient about being pressured. Safety is not the price of connection. Naming this clearly is not an accusation against men. It is the ground we have to stand on before we can talk about bridges at all. Setting that beside the rest, the numbers don't point to villains, they point to a broken compass. Men hesitating to reach out and women holding firmer boundaries are not the same thing, and we won't pretend they are. but neither is malice. We can meet this uncertainty with patience rather than suspicion, and start seeing each other as fellow travelers trying to find the way back. The roots, when old scripts meet new realities. There is one measured difference in how we reach out. Women are far more likely than men to say they'd be extremely or very likely to turn to a friend for emotional support, 54% versus 38%. That is the finding, and it is the only thing in this section the data actually says. What follows is our reading of it, offered as perspective rather than evidence. It seems to us that this isn't about superiority, it's about uneven pathways. Our sense is that many men were never handed the vocabulary or the safe rooms in which to ask for help, and that many women find their networks stretched thin by the care they end up providing. We can't prove that from the numbers above, and we won't pretend otherwise. But when needs go unmet, we don't just feel lonely, we feel misunderstood, and we start to assume the other person is the problem, when we may both be working with the same worn-out tools. If that reading is close to right, then healing starts by naming the gap without judgment, new scripts that invite men to speak without shame, and that let women set boundaries without guilt. It's about expanding our capacity to care for each other, not merely tolerating the difference. Everything up to here has been data. This part is not, and we want to say so before we say anything else. What follows is reflection, how this landscape looks to us, sitting with those numbers. We have no study that measures the inner life of a lonely man or a tired woman, so we are not going to dress our thoughts up as findings. Take this as one perspective offered honestly, and leave the parts that don't fit your life. Pain is not a competition. That much we do believe. The shape of the ache seems to differ, and we suspect the wound for many men feels like the loss of a safe harbor, somewhere vulnerability might be met with support rather than judgment. We cannot show you that in a chart. It is what we think we hear, in the silence where a man might have spoken. And it seems to us that many women are carrying a different weight, being the one who keeps the connections alive, the one who remembers, the one who reaches out first, and finding that the reaching is rarely returned. When connection becomes a job rather than a shared refuge, we imagine tiredness sets in, and the person trying hardest to bridge the gap may end up feeling the most alone. Again, imagine, not measure. If any of that lands, then neither side is the villain. His silence may be asking for safety, her tiredness may be asking for help. We can't prove it. We can only say that when we stop keeping score and start listening for the need underneath the behavior, something in the room usually changes. From this shared ground, we move toward rebuilding by updating expectations. We carry scripts from a different era, assigning men stoic strength and women the burden of emotional management. These maps don't fit our reality today, where roles blur and needs evolve. Letting go of these rigid roles isn't about losing identity, it's about making room for the authentic person standing before you. Some people find that healing deepens through shared vulnerability. For some men, that has looked like risking the discomfort of naming a fear or a need rather than retreating into silence. For some women, it has looked like saying plainly what would help and letting their own need for rest be as legitimate as anyone else's. We're not handing anyone a task. We only notice that when one person sets down the armor, it often becomes easier for the other to do the same. This direction is offered as a compassionate perspective grounded in social science, not as clinical therapy. As a hybrid team of human writers and AI, we reflect the data and offer a hand up, but we cannot treat trauma or acute distress. If you or someone you love is in crisis, please reach out to a licensed professional. Rebuilding connections seems to take patience, and more than one attempt. For some, it has begun with an unhurried conversation about what support actually looks like now, rather than what it was supposed to look like. Small things appear to count for more than large ones. A conversation that stays calm, a moment of shared laughter, a request met with kindness. We are all navigating a world that can feel isolating, but none of us has to walk it alone. The data shows the wound. Our willingness to show up for each other, flaws and all, is what seems to offer a way through. So, how do we actually start walking that path? It doesn't require grand gestures or perfect conversations. It starts with the small daily bridges we can build right where we are. Maybe it's a man asking a woman what she's passionate about and listening without trying to fix it. Maybe it's a woman asking a man how he's feeling and holding space for his answer, even if it's just tired. These moments matter. They remind us that we're not opponents. We're people navigating the same messy, beautiful human experience. We won't hand you a list of exercises. That isn't what this show is for. We'll only say what we've noticed. A pause before reacting seems to buy more than it costs. A question nobody expected tends to open a door. And a fear said out loud, in our experience, is rarely met the way we feared it would be. When one shield comes down, there is suddenly room for the other to come down too. Some days the bridge feels shaky, and that is not failure. That is what a bridge feels like while it's being built. When we see men and women as allies carrying weights we can't see, we stop hunting for enemies. The data shows the wound, but whatever healing there is happens in the kitchen, the office, the living room. It happens between people. Your presence, your patience, and your willingness to try again are worth more here than any advice we could give you. Thank you for trusting us with this conversation. We are The Velvet Verdict, a collaboration between human writers and AI analysis, dedicated to healing the divide with honesty and heart. Stay curious, stay kind, and keep building those bridges.